InSight Systems, EDL.com.
Go ahead.
On InSight Court. At this time, MRO will have loaded their electrosequences. Marco is expecting carrier lock at any time. Marco B is reported there in bent pipe. Still waiting on A.
Copy that. Thank you.
Radio Science report, UHF carrier detected.
EDL.com, Marco Alpha is in bent pipe mode. Marco Bravo has locked on the carrier. Marco Alpha has also locked on carrier.
System base on InSight Cord. As expected, the DSN has LOS for InSight Expand.
Copy that. Thank you. All station InSight Systems on InSight Cord. DSN has lost the X-band signal from InSight, indicated expected cruise stage separation. Standing by for UHF signal acquisition via Marco or Radio Science.
We are about 5 minutes from entry and have confirmation we've lost the X-band signal from InSight. This was expected because we have transitioned from the antenna on the cruise stage to the UHF antenna on board the spacecraft. Ground stations have detected the UHF signal and Marco has locked on the signal. This confirms that InSight is transmitting UHF signals as expected. InSight telemetry through the Marco relay is not expected until about 2 minutes before entry.
So, Rob, that was exactly what we were hoping to hear, that the Marcos are
The vehicle
working.
has also performed the turn to entry maneuver. The vehicle is turning away from a sun-pointing attitude and oriented itself to enter the Martian atmosphere.
This is a big first step. Getting the cruise stage separated. It's now, after the vehicle turns itself to the right orientation, the cruise stage is now going to be get further and further away until it's about 3 or 4 football fields away, and will burn up in parallel as the vehicle enters Mars.
And Christine mentioned turn to entry. What does that mean?
Well, it's because the cruise stage has to be pushed off to one side, like this. The rest of the vehicle has to turn to face the atmosphere and to be dead nuts on as it hits the top of the atmosphere.
So this is taking all the heat coming into the atmosphere.
Exactly. It'll be both provide a source of drag, but also thermal protection because it gets over 1,500 degrees Celsius on the top on this heat shield. Very, very hot. But on the inside of the heat shield, it's maybe only a fraction of a few degrees above room temperature. So it's a wonderful protective device to keep our lander safe.
All right. So the next thing we're standing by for is
entry. Getting to the top of the atmosphere, gradually slowing down. Right now, the vehicle's just now beginning to, very soon, we'll be beginning to feel the atmosphere touching it. Actually, entry is above the atmosphere slightly, so it's really not until half a minute or so after entry before we start really detecting the fact that atmosphere is slowing us down.
All right, we'll be standing by.
Yes, exciting.
Rob, now entry is scheduled for 11:47. The cruise stage SEP and the entry times are locked in, correct?
They are. They're locked in when we selected the target and aimed the vehicle very precisely. That allows us to know exactly when we hit the entry point, which is 55 kilometers from the center of Mars.
So we know those times are locked in, but what about all the other events that take place in EDL?
Regi Science reports dropping carrier power as expected.
Marco A and Marco B have telemetry.
Just heard, both Marcos have telemetry.
They are doing their job. These small CubeSats are relaying ones and zeros with a few seconds lag from the vehicle up to these two vehicles, and they forward them back to Earth to the Deep Space Network using X-band antennas.
And keep in mind, this was all an experiment. We weren't sure that this was going to work, but we had this need that we didn't have live communication
That's right.
in this particular mission.
Well, we don't really need communications. We don't need their information, except if something went wrong. We would very much like to get the data right now. We have other
We are now
spacecraft.
receiving InSight telemetry via the Marco relay.
It's
Fantastic.
flowing into their space. This is fabulous. That means the team now can watch the data flowing onto their screens as if they're communicating
This
directly
data
to the
will
vehicle.
provide detailed information about the state of the spacecraft throughout EDL.
We were on pins and needles waiting for that because we weren't really sure.
This is wonderful news. This will allow us to give some, if this continues working all the way to the ground and beyond, we might even see a first picture from the surface of Mars
Wouldn't that be great?
very soon.
Atmospheric entry on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Here we go.
So in a few seconds, the vehicle will start sensing the atmosphere. I said 22 kilometers from the center of Mars. And it's going to start to slow down very, very slowly at first, but then faster and faster and faster till to reach us about 7 Gs. I made that mistake on the video. It's actually 7 Gs, not 12. And so but we'll still very, very quickly slow down. And from 15...
In approximately 1 minute, InSight is expected to reach its maximum heating rate.
Oh, yes.
Plasma blackout is possible during peak heating and could cause a temporary dropout of telemetry. This could last for as long as 2 minutes.
Yeah, the gas that comes off the heat shield as it's slowing down, it looks like a meteor if you're on Mars watching the streak go by. That brightness of gas does interfere with the radio reception. And so it's possible that Marco will lose that signal while it's going through this very hot entry.
But not to be alarmed.
Not to be alarmed. It's part of the design. We completely expect it.
Radio science reports plasma blackout as expected.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Ground stations have reported plasma blackout, still receiving InSight telemetry via Marco.
Marco Alpha has carrier interruption.
InSight should now be experiencing the peak heating rate. Portions of the heat shield may reach nearly 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit as it protects the lander from the heating environment.
That's hot.
I'll say.
Marco Bravo shows carrier interruption, but still in lock.
InSight has passed through peak deceleration. Telemetry shows the spacecraft saw about 8 Gs.
Marco Alpha and Marco Bravo maintain lock.
Radio science reports carrier detected.
Yeah.
So, several different communications coming in.
InSight is now traveling at a velocity of 2,000 meters per second.
It seems to have passed this very critical point of peak heating and peak deceleration. The next big step is parachute inflation.
And you can see that on our timeline on the bottom of the screen. The next event is parachute deploy.
InSight is now traveling at 1,000 meters per second.
Very close.
Once InSight slows to about 400 meters per second, it will deploy its 12-meter diameter supersonic parachute. The parachute will deploy nominally at about Mach 1.7. Standing by for parachute deploy.
Radio science reports sudden change in Doppler.
Ground stations are observing signals consistent with parachute deploy.
Marco Alpha, Marco Bravo maintain lock status.
Telemetry shows parachute deployment. Radar powered on. Heat shield separation commanded.
This is really good news so far.
That's fantastic.
I'm on pins and needles.
We have radar activation where the radar is beginning to search for the ground. Once the radar locks on the ground and InSight is about 1 kilometer above the surface, the lander will separate from the backshell and begin terminal descent using its 12 descent engines. Altitude convergence, the radar has locked on the ground.
Yes.
Standing by for lander separation.
Carrier interruption on Marco Alpha and Marco Bravo.
Lander separation commanded. Altitude 600 meters. Gravity turn, altitude 400 meters.
We're getting there.
300 meters. 200 meters. 80 meters. 60 meters. 50 meters, constant velocity. 37 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters. 17 meters, standing by for touchdown. Touchdown confirmed.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
This never gets old.
No, it doesn't, Rob. Control
what a
room
relief.
just erupted.
Fabulous.
Shaking
Fabulous.
hands with the Marco team there.
Christine, you did great. Tim Preiser, one of the key designers at Lockheed. Sandy Krasner, what a great team. What a great. This is really fabulous.
Fantastic news.
Thank you.
Lots of fist bumping going on in there.